GM. Good morning and welcome to the DeFi State, a weekly show brought to you by Hashflow. Guys, can you hear me? Just making sure. Guys?
Here, we can hear you.
Oh, perfect.
By the way, Nicole, you might have to add John as a speaker.
I have added John as a speaker. John, are you with us?
I test listener for some reason. Not sure why.
Yeah, just FYI, guys, if you're new to Twitter Spaces, it can be glitchy sometimes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nicole Benham. I'm the host of this show. I'm also head of community for Hashflow. This show, the DeFi State, brings notable speakers, founders, investors, and generally the brightest minds in the industry to discuss what the future of decentralization will look like. My favorite thing about this show is that every guest is so multidimensional and has so much to contribute beyond insights on DeFi and Web3. So if you're eager to learn and expand your mind, you're in the right place. If you also want other people to learn and expand their minds, you can also share this space so people can be aware of it. I know Twitter has changed the design of how you can, experience Twitter Spaces, so not everyone is seeing that this space is happening. Always helpful to share. Today we have with us my co-host Varun, who's the CEO of Hashflow, and also we have with us a very special guest, Jon Kol. Jon previously worked at Galaxy Digital and is now a co-founder of Hyperlane, which is an interchain messaging platform for developers. He's focused on all things crypto. He has a great blog that I can share later. He's particularly interested in interoperability, new ways of incentive design, and choice architecture, everything at the intersection of crypto assets and financial systems. And he's also interested in anyone attempting to create new or novel business models or modes of monetization, which makes him the perfect guest for this show. Jon, what's up? How are you?
I'm great. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Was that a good intro? Was that fair?
Fantastic. More than fair. I don't deserve
it. You do deserve it. I want to talk to you, about so much, but let's start with Hyperlane. Can you tell us a little bit more about Hyperlane?
Yeah, of course. So, Hyperlane, like in a nutshell, is an interchain communication platform. It's a developer tool. Developers can use it to send messages between blockchains. But what does that really mean is that now you can create an app that can serve users regardless of the blockchain you're on. Probably most of the people here are familiar with Varun's amazing app, Hashflow. Hashflow is one of the first ones that really created like a true, what we call an interchain app, one that can serve you on a number of chains and just fill your order at the best place. And so Varun's got an incredible team. They were able to do a lot of the heavy lifting themselves. What we're building with Hyperlane is something that we hope will allow, any developer team, even the ones not as talented as the ones at Hashflow, to do this much more easily, to do it securely. And that's kind of, that's the TLDR on it.
John, thank you so much for all the kind words. I think it's been a kindness overload early in the morning. I like that though. So, I had a bunch of follow-up questions on that. So for TLDR, for everyone who just got here, John is building a new interoperability protocol to allow for cross-chain communications. And I was curious to, I think it might be actually helpful to sort of discuss the trade-offs and how you guys are different from other folks like Layer Zero and Wormhole and so on. Because I already have like some insights into how your product works, but also it'd be nice to kind of double click on that, maybe even discuss some of the fundamental cross-chain concepts that people may not be knowing.
Of course, yeah. So And I'm going to ask you in advance to stop me if it feels like we're getting too into the weeds. But on a high
Also,
level,
John, sorry to interrupt. Is it, there might be a bit of a disturbance on your end. I was wondering if anything you could
oh,
do
sorry,
to.
let me try and move to a slightly different area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that too. I wasn't sure if it was just on my end, but I guess it isn't. Varun, how are you today in the meantime?
I am doing good. I'm doing good. I think for all you guys looking for alpha, there might be a big reveal next week. So, I think,
Ooh.
yeah, I think,
Ooh. I
yeah,
love an
Yeah,
alpha drop.
dropping a
yeah,
teaser like that.
yeah.
Hopefully, this is a little bit better.
Yes.
Um,
I'm not
all right,
gonna
so
lie,
let's.
John, it's slightly better, but we'll take it.
All right. Yeah, I'll have to apologize. These days with the big conference in New York, you got to be in and out of a million places.
I
But I
get it.
didn't want to miss this today.
I get it.
So, high level, pretty much there's two general approaches to how you can do cross-chain communication. Because really what you're trying to do is you're trying to tell one blockchain about something that happened on another blockchain. So, you spent enough time in crypto now, probably sounds a little bit like the Oracle problem. Like we're trying to learn something about something outside of a blockchain. In this case, it just happens to come from another. So if we could bake that into like the consensus process and have some type of verification in that way, that would be ideal. But that's very difficult. To do that, the blockchains need to be very similarly constructed. Now, the best example of that is the Cosmos ecosystem, and they have the what they call IBC. IBC is probably easily one of the best interoperability protocols, and as long as you build within the confines of something that fits into that IBC mode, it's amazing, right? Like there's so many things you can do with it. That's why you're seeing a um, growing ecosystem around the Cosmos SDK. And we are very much like inspired by IBC, but what we saw is like, the world's getting bigger than just this construction. Maybe we can't convince everybody to build blockchains that look like this. And so, how do we take those same principles from IBC and expand them to a much broader, a broader set of architectures? So, if you're not going to bake it into consensus, which is like the best approach to, um, what are you going to do? You're going to have to create some type of Oracle system, and now there's different ways to do that. Our way is one of the ways. So, if you think of Wormhole, the way Wormhole does it, it puts together a group of people who are very, very reputable. You know, they have their guardians. They are some of the best firms in the industry. You know, folks like Figment and Staked and FTX and others, really trustworthy people. And they are the ones who are telling you, hey, this stuff happened on chain A, so you can trust it on chain B. Another approach would be to employ, some type of economic security. So, something like proof of stake. So you get these validators. They all put up some money that they stand to lose if they lie. Uh, and that kind of looks like Excellent. Or you can do what Layer 0 does. Layer 0 has two parties. One's known as the relayer and one is known as the oracle. The oracle tells you what happened on the chain, and the relayer sends it to the next chain. So, of the existing approaches, that generally kind of summarizes all of it. We learned from everything that's come before us, and we try to create something that we think will be, at the same time, the easiest for developers to use, while maintaining a very high bar for how secure it is, and allowing them to very easily leverage that security. So we borrow a little bit from the reputation and the economic security, in that we'll have validators on every blockchain that we support. Those validators are going to look to the authenticity of the messages, sign them, kind of putting their name on that message, and then that gets relayed over to the relevant blockchain. And Now comes in the thing that we do that we think really changes the game for interoperability. We've created this thing. Well, I shouldn't say we. It's mostly my co-founders. I was in the room while this is happening. It's giga brain type of work, stuff that I'm not suited for. And what it does basically is it lets the developer of any application configure their own security model. So if they want to say add an optimistic security model, which is like another approach to force some latency and say, hey, there's going to be a time window where this message doesn't get processed. We're going to look at it, make sure that it's okay. If it's not okay, we're going to submit a fraud proof. But once the window checks out, you can process it. They can do that. If they want to have just economic security, they can do that. If they want to mix and match those, they can do that. We have a menu of what we call interchain security modules, and you can pick up any item from that menu. You can mix and match it. You can even customize the security based on the content of like an action that someone's doing. If you go to your bank and you try to take out $10, they'll barely ask for your PIN number. But if you're going to try and withdraw your whole account, they're going to hold you up for like a rectal exam. So in the same way, that's generally like a sensical process. Different rules for different sizes of transactions. With Hyperlane, any developer that uses this could define different rules for different transactions. So if someone is trying to withdraw the entirety of a pool, well, you might want to force a long delay on that. You might want to have a lot of eyeballs on. If someone's transacting for $100, like maybe we just opt for the fastest way, because even if it was malicious, the harm there is not very big, and so that hope gives you a big, a good enough but not too boring overview of our approaches, our approach relative to everybody else's.
Uh, Nicole, if you have questions, you can go ahead. But I was going to ask you one more thing there. So is Hyperlane? So are you guys also building a bridge, or is it mainly going to be a message passing, and then you expect other people to sort of design the bridge, or what's that?
So right now, actually, we have a couple teams that are trying to create their own more innovative bridge design. And so we're gonna see that through, see how it works, and uh, kind of listen to what the market tells us. The other alternative that we're considering is, instead of a bridge, a more like native value transfer mechanism. Uh, and people on top of that can build bridges that are more user facing. Um, we never, so we are very, very focused on being a developer product, and we're very cautious of signaling to some of our developers that we're going to try and compete with them for their users. Like, our focus is we want to make it easy for developers to create an amazing experience for their users. And if once you start competing for user attention, I think we get into a dangerous place. I know it's a bit unorthodox, because certainly a lot of the other protocols have built their own bridges, but we'll see. We think a different approach might be beneficial here.
I want to take this in a different direction, if that's okay. Jon, I read your blog post titled "The Accountless Internet." Can you, in your own words, walk us through that? Because the role of identity on the internet and the amount of accounts that we have truly is, I mean, it's a lot. And the way that you broke it down in this blog post really made me think. So I'd love to for you to walk us through that.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that got some audience. It was that a long time ago. It's something I still think about a lot. So for the audience, I don't assume you have the time to read my rambling. So now you get to listen to them. So if you're like me, you probably have lots of accounts. You know, low end, you probably have more than 400 accounts if you've been on the internet for more than a few years. It kind of feels like, you know, we're walking around with these like massive, massive keychains in our digital pockets, except you have to remember a lot about these keys. There's so many accounts that now there's like this multi-billion-dollar industry of password managers. You know, one account to manage all your accounts, and you lose that account, and now you're fucked. Excuse my language. I don't know the rules here, but I tend to talk like that. And that just seems untenable. And you know, with crypto, we always moan about how bad the experience is, and it's true. Like on many respects, the experience is terrible. But in one aspect, the experience is absolutely amazing, at least for me and several others I know. The fact that your keys are basically your account, and they are your access mechanism to everything. Right? You don't have to remember much except for your seed phrase that you want to store securely, but it's your unilogin to everything. Right? It's your sign on with Google, except that it's not held by some, you know, amorphous corporation. So that's kind of where the thinking started around this idea of the accountless internet. And then I started realizing that actually, like, this thing becomes a lot more than just an account. It becomes like a really powerful representation of your online identity. You know, the account, like standard, you know, user credentials for most traditional internet things, like it's meant to signify your identity. It's like, okay, this is how I know that Nicole is this user, that Varun is this user, that John is this user. But so even though we have basically like we have a much fewer number of actual identities than we do accounts. Crypto kind of lets us flip it because we can have as many, you know, we can basically create an identity around each one of our accounts. The account kind of becomes, you know, a great source of digital identity because it contains a lot of the value that you create and that you care about, whether it's the assets you hold, the transactions you engage in, you know, the collectibles that you collect. You know, I envision a world eventually where most of the information that we put out into the world, a lot of it's digital. A lot of that could be tied to your account as well, right? A tweet, an article, those could basically be items that are held in an account, and then apps like Twitter could just read them from your account instead of storing them internally. So if you combine like you combine value and information, I think that all stacks up to create, you know, pretty strong digital identity. And the identities we have to our accounts, they don't just have to be like, you know, it's not just John. Like one of them could be, you know, 0x John. One of it could be like my Anon account. One of it could be, right, like, so you get this really unique opportunity to kind of create any identity you want and build around that, and at the same time not have to manage a increasingly large and unwieldy set of accounts. So that's, again, I could ramble on this for an hour, so I'm trying to stop myself.
That's what we want, for you to ramble about this so we can learn. Well, can you elaborate a little bit on how Ethereum and Ethereum-based apps, you know, sort of solve this?
For sure. Yes. I think like this is, you know, to me, this is one of the most magical things about crypto. So to explain what something like what an accountless internet and accountless app is, let me make up a term, accountful. And let's think of pretty much almost every app that you use outside of crypto is an accountful app. And this term that we just invented, accountful, we're going to use it to describe anything where the account is part of the app that you're using, right? So like if you think about Twitter, you sign it, like Twitter has your account information. It lives inside of their servers. Whenever you want to sign in, you give them those credentials and they're like, cool, you can come in now. So an accountful service, it owns your account. Crypto apps don't work like that at all. right? The account lives outside of the application. A lot lives outside of the application, and the application just kind of performs a service. So, uh, continue on kind of the Twitter example. In Twitter, we post tweets. They're all stored inside of Twitter. We visit Twitter, we give it our credentials, and then it displays us a feed. An accountless version of Twitter would look something like when you post a tweet, it gets written into your account. You can imagine like some text-based asset being added to your account. And the app, instead of wanting to own this thing, it just says, "Hey, can I read the stuff that's inside your account?" Uh, it does that, and now you're off to the races. Or another tangible example, you can think of like an accountful financial service being something like Robinhood. They have your account, they own the account, they own also all of the assets. When you buy something with Robinhood, they hold it for you, and you just give them orders. You say, "Buy this for me, sell that for me." But everything happens inside of Robinhood. Whereas something like Uniswap or Hashflow, those are accountless. Those are accountless financial services. They don't hold the assets. You come to them. All the assets are held in your account. Your account is held externally. And you're like, "Hey, I'm going to buy this thing and I'm going to sell that thing." And the app just performs the service for you. And that's it, right? It's more of like, putting a DVD into a DVD player. Sorry, might probably aging myself by talking about DVDs. Not sure everyone's used them. But to me, like, there's something really magical about this, and we're just kind of scratching the surface now of what this world looks like, what this type of internet looks like. And I think it's going to bring us to a world where, like, not too far from now, 10, 20 years from now, I have a daughter. She's pretty young, she's like a year and a half. She's going to look at me and she's like, "Dad, I can't believe you guys, like, roamed the internet, and all those companies owned everything, and you guys were just, like, these little serfs walking around, not, like, everything. You didn't hold anything. None of it was your own. They could take it, they could use it, they could do whatever the hell they want with it. No one had to ask you for anything. And we basically had no digital rights, so to speak, no digital property rights." So
Isn't
that's
it
kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, and isn't it funny? It's funny. I didn't actually know this, and most other people didn't really realize this until we were told. Like, I remember distinctly, 2 years ago, people started to tell me, like, "You don't even own your own data," and I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" They're like, "Yeah, the picture you uploaded isn't yours," or like things like that. But it's good to talk about this stuff because there's still people who don't know. Varun, I saw you unmute.
Uh, yeah, I think John, especially in here in this case, we talked about identity, obviously, and how, or accounting, and how DeFi is permissionless, and it's actually likely going to be the future where it's going to be more privacy driven. But I think one of the things that's interesting, I think this is I'm speaking from a financial markets perspective, is I think one of the big applications in CeFi tends to be, or just not even CeFi, like in general, the world mostly works on the concept of credit and lending, right? So if you think about the fundamentals of money itself, it's essentially it's a debt instrument, right? If you're thinking about like sort of the mass adoption of crypto, and if lending becomes a core concept in that world, uh, how do you see the role of identity and accounting play into making this a more seamless transition? Where you have how do you enable lending with if you don't have insights into who the counterparty is, and at which point I feel like knowing some kind of on-chain credentials is kind of essential, or maybe I'm missing something.
Not at all. Not missing anything. Actually, this is another thing I've been super interested in and wrote about. And so I think, identity is imperative to extending credit to someone. In fact, like you're just never going to extend credit to another being or entity or really whatever without some concept of their identity. And I think credit worthiness, kind of a requirement to properly underwrite and extend credit to someone, is usually assessed on the combination of two things, sometimes just one of the two. And I like to think of those as it's basically a combination of your reputation, who you are, what we think of you, and the actions you've taken. And so, how can we get that in like the pseudonymous, context of blockchain? Well, I think it's going to be very difficult to do in totally privacy preserving context. The ones where there's absolutely no record that a potential credit extender could inspect. That's a bit undoable. So sorry, like I don't know if there's going to be credit extended on Monero anytime soon. But you're talking about pseudonymous kind of like transparent contexts like ETH. I think absolutely it will be. So what do you do with your address? If nothing else, your address collects and demonstrates a very detailed and immutable, and as long as the blockchain is secure, accurate history of your actions. And now we just said that's a key component of credit. Like, do you pay things on time? Like, did you borrow before? How much did you borrow? Did you pay it on time? Did you pay it off early? Were you delinquent? Right? All of those are things that we can start to establish um, from your address. Well, what's really interesting is that in the last 2 years, more and more people kind of like, without being asked to, without being forced to, started treating their addresses as a bigger part of their identity. And, people will like change their Twitter handle to their ENS name. People will build like a whole anon persona around an address. Think of, let's say, famous one for a while, perhaps infamous now, is 0xB1. Kind of pretty much anyone who was paying attention to DeFi was aware of 0xB1. So now it's not just that the address starts that like has the history of your actions, prerequisite to extending credit. You also start to build a reputation, and reputation is just as material in lending as your actions. But we're really seeing both of these things kind of materialize in a crypto context. So I actually don't think I think on-chain credit is really not that far away. Uh, what we haven't seen really really happen yet, Dgen score was probably like the closest thing to it, where it was creating some type of information about you or some type of badge based on the previous actions you've taken. If you squint, you look at that, and it's not that hard to see how like you go from that to credit score. It just hasn't happened yet. Why? I can't tell you. I'm aware of several startups working on this, so I have to assume it's not that far away. But I definitely think identity is imperative. We're going to need it to extend credit, and I'm pretty optimistic about that happening, even without like strict uh, strict KYC. I think the knowledge, like I think people tend to really overestimate how much, at least of consumer lending, actually gets enforced at the individual level. Like, the main penalty for defaulting on a loan is losing access to future credit because your credit score goes to shit. We don't really have like debtors prisons anymore.
Sorry,
Right.
that last. Wait, we don't really have what? I didn't hear the last sentence.
Oh, sorry, we don't have debtors prisons anymore. Like they don't come throw you in jail when you default.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, they're just like, hey, your credit's going to shit. You can never borrow ever again. Fuck you.
Yeah, that is That is the repercussion.
And if you
Varun,
think about that, like in a crypto setting, right? So like imagine I spent 3 years building up the history on this address. I borrowed from Maker, from Aave, from Compound. I paid on time. Stuff's great. Like at that point, I have something to lose. The thing I have to lose is not apparent because at least for most crypto people I talk to, they seem to think like, oh yeah, you might still you know default on a loan. Well, if you do, you got to start over. That's going to be just as hard as starting over in the real world or the physical world, let's just say. So I'm very optimistic on like on-chain credit using like the identities that we build through our addresses, through our actions, through our reputations.
Uh, John, so I suppose I had like a other follow up question on that front. I think this may be taking the topic slightly towards a different direction again. So I feel like again, in terms of institutional, I think there's been a bit of a talk. I think we had a space a couple of weeks ago where we talked a lot about institutional adoption of crypto and so on. And I feel like a big chunk of the reason, one of the big reasons why that adoption hasn't taken place is being able to know who the counterparty is. And I think even when I speak to many people, they say like KYC is one of the big reasons, or AML laws are one of the big reasons why they haven't been able to participate, because not knowing who they are dealing with is a big red flag. And on the other hand, I also keep hearing that for crypto or DeFi to take, become really, really mainstream, you need that sort of institutional adoption, right? Where do you sit in this one? Because I think you also worked with Galaxy in the past. So you, I would imagine, would have a better insight into how do you guys at that time viewed participating in crypto and DeFi in general, and what is it that's stopping you guys from partaking, like more freely, or what needs to change for them to feel comfortable, and what's that sweet spot?
Totally. Now, not only did I work together, I got kind of spearheading our attempts and eventual success to get involved uh, in DeFi and other on-chain capacities. And, we were, or I guess Galaxy still is, a publicly listed firm, a firm that is very, very, very interested in maintaining compliance. It does everything it can, is probably more, you know, keeping up with compliance is probably rule number one at a firm like that values its institutional relationships above all else. And so that was kind of like, this is the sandbox. Like, here's, if you want to do this, here are the rules. We need to figure out how to do this while maintaining compliance. Well, so we had to talk to pretty much every regulator, every law firm, every general counsel at every DeFi project, at every venture firm, starting in 2019, and really that effort never ceased. I'm sure it's still ongoing. I've left a little bit ago. And so the first barrier for us is, you're absolutely right. It is uh, it is tied to knowing your knowing your counterparty, so KYC, and specifically like things you're really really afraid of are uh, AML issues, and most particularly you're very very afraid of running afoul of OFAC. Uh, you know, 3 years ago when I talked about OFAC, no one in crypto knew, except for the lawyers. There's no scarier four-letter combination for an American lawyer at a finance firm than OFAC. But now everybody in crypto knows it because of some recent events. Um, and so, yeah, knowing who the other side is to make sure that you're not violating, the Bank Secrecy Act, that you're not running afoul of OFAC is imperative. That's very, very difficult to do in a pseudonymous context. So undoubtedly, like we're gonna need better tools, but on-chain surveillance has gotten like really, really, really sophisticated. The folks at Chainalysis, with CRM, and many competitors have become very good at what they do. And with that, we now have a good sense of like what are the addresses of the bad actors? What are the patterns that the bad actors exhibit? And so one solution, instead of requiring everybody to do very strict KYC, right, kind of like putting a steel wall around all DeFi applications and saying the only way to get past the wall is by providing your social security, your identification, and all of it. Another way is to just scan all of the pools and look at those and say, reference those scans against the information that's held by CRM, by Chainalysis, with respect to who are the bad actors, and
John,
saying
there's
is
a
one.
lot of noise on your end.
Shit, I'm sorry. It's storming real bad around. Let me try if I can get indoors so much. Okay.
Sorry, guys. For the context, I think John is in New York, and there's a massive storm at the moment over there, so you can literally hear everything. So
Yeah, you can literally hear.
the storm has joined the space as well. I reckon it wanted to learn about it wanted to learn about the DeFi state. So
Oh my, rude of me to not introduce the storm at the beginning of the space.
I'm sorry. I should have sent you the guest list beforehand. Next time. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, next time we will. This is very good. It's we're learning as we're going.
It's a, what's
Hey
what's
guys,
the
I'm sorry. It's gonna take me a few minutes if you wanted to, you know, chat about something maybe Hashflow related while I find filters.
no worries.
That's okay. Yeah, Varun, let's talk about Hashflow for a little bit. When token? Just kidding. Let's talk about something else.
Wait. Did you ask me when token? So, Nico, I told you not to ask that question.
I know, I'm just kidding.
No, it's fine. I think didn't I say like there's a big news coming out next week? Earlier. I mean,
Oh yeah,
I suppose
so what can
that's
you what
something. That's something, right? So, uh, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
okay, so it's something. That's all we get.
Well, I think. Well, I wouldn't be that cryptic about it, but definitely, I think if people have seen the roadmap, I think it's in the right direction, right? So I think this is something to do with the hashverse. Since there's only 20 people here, I think this is enough alpha. So I think this they can take to go about this.
Oh wow, so you're dropping alpha because of the small size of the room?
I think the small and the more committed size of the room. We have seen the people, and I've seen these guys like every single space. So these are the true OG hash gang. So that they get to get the alpha.
Oh wow. What's up, Hash Gang? What an honor.
No, I think uh, wait, are any of you guys in New York this week for Mainnet?
They can't respond, but if you are in New York for mainnet, go ahead and give us a heart emoji and we'll scroll down. If you're in New York for mainnet, give us a heart emoji.
Oh, I guess not.
Wow.
I had like a hash swag for you guys if you guys want to come collect it in person. So
For some reason, I have a hard time believing that.
uh, that no one is in New York.
Yeah,
Maybe it's like an overload of conferences because there's been too many conferences happening in the past.
true. There have been way too many.
It's like the bear market hasn't affected the conference. In fact, people are still like bullish on conferences.
Yeah, there are way too many conferences.
By the way, let's check in with John. Let me quickly check to see if he's still available, or if not, we can likely end the space sooner today, if in case there is still issues on his end.
John, how are we doing?
Let me know, is it any better where I'm at now?
I love how the second you turn on your mic, I hear the storm. It's fine. I mean, I'm enjoying this conversation. And we don't have that much longer to go. So, we can maybe do, address a few more questions and then call it a day. How does that sound?
Good deal.
All right, let's do it. Let's talk about the market. You know, John, you were
Oof.
previously at Galaxy Digital, so I'd imagine you have insight into market conditions. Um, have we reached the bottom? What's going on?
Oof, that's a tough one. No, I don't think so. I think it's hard to know. I used to work at Morgan Stanley also before crypto, and the guy that ran the trading floor, my old boss, used to have the saying, it's like the only thing you get from picking bottoms is snake fingers, which is inappropriate but still funny saying. Uh, so it's hard to say. Like, I don't think we'll have bottomed out until several months after it's pretty clear, like the macro environment has cooled down. And there's two main drivers there. On one hand, you have central banks kind of around the world, which are very much coordinated in their effort to stop price inflation. I do think they, you know, they think they're using the right tool. I don't think they're using the right tool because they are kind of failing to pay attention to the actual drivers of it, right? Like, I don't think interest rates are driving the price of gasoline or the price of food, but that's a whole different topic. They are certainly crushing asset markets, which does seem to be a part of their goal. Uh, so that's one thing that's going to have to change. The second is actually not the macro environment, it's the micro environment with respect to crypto. So, before we can start thinking about has our market bottom, want to be probably looking for signs that crypto is participating in broader risk rallies. So, in the last few weeks and months, really, you would have broad relief rallies. These are common in like a bear market, but crypto didn't always participate in them. So the Nasdaq, S&P, EM markets would be up, and those you could think of as very clearly like risk assets. But crypto wasn't rallying to the same extent, and in some cases wasn't rallying at all with those risk assets. Now that's really, really important. You want to, like, how do you get out of a down market? Well, a down market just tells you that on a consistent basis, there are more sellers than there are buyers. And it's not referring specifically to amount of people, it's referring to amount of buying power, amount of assets being bought or sold. So we need large pockets of money to turn their attention to our asset class and buy it alongside other things they're buying. And until that happens, things are not going to change because fortunately and unfortunately, the market now is quite large, right? Like the market caps that we're talking about are much larger than they were 3 years ago. So a much larger inflow is required to offset these large outflows. And I think, like, as long as we're seeing that crypto is not participating in, in these other risk rallies, it's hard to say that we found the bottom. So that's like, I think trying to time the market to a moment is not good, but otherwise timing in markets is very critical. And so you do want to pay attention, like, are things starting to turn, right? Like, is the Fed's outlook, like, are we already at the target rate that the Fed has set? And yesterday, they're looking at about 4.5 on the federal funds rate, within like the next 12 to 18 months. Well, are we there? Okay, once we're there, you could start feeling a lot better. Then, is crypto rallying with other risk assets? Is it? Great. Okay, now we can get back to normal. We can get back to up. But until those things happen, I'd remain pretty cautious. Now that said, I'm extremely overexposed. So Yeah, so that's kind of my view. Hopefully, it's helpful. I know there's not. I wish I could give you a more accurate prediction. If I had one, I would, but I don't.
No, I think that's. I mean, it's hard to predict macros, right? Or
Yeah.
what's going to happen. It was more like along the lines of, what are other OG players thinking about these things. I think just usually helpful insight to see different perspectives. But again, by no means I think this is it's not a prediction or an oracle. Although it'd be nice to be an oracle. I think in that scenario, they can tell me like this is exactly when I should do things.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole, I think those are all the questions I had. And I think, John, you also had to go to the conference to speak in 10 minutes, I reckon. You're going on the stage.
Indeed.
Yeah, I was
Guys, thank you
debating
so much.
whether I continue not even the questions that I had, but just questions that came to mind based on what you said. But we will continue this conversation later. I know you have to go. Thank you so much for being here, John. It was
Thank you
truly
both. I'm sorry about the storm.
insightful.
So,
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this was helpful for everyone here, and we will definitely continue this conversation and any subjects that were brought up. We do this weekly show, so be sure to follow Hashflow, myself, and Varun, so you will get notifications every time we do this show. So thank you so much, guys. Thanks for being here.
thank you.